How's it going, guys? It's Paul Myers, licensed counselor, owner and lead therapist of Intentional Counseling. We are a private practice in Frisco. We specialize in mental health. And today I'm going to cover one of the childhood imprints or love style from a book called How We Love by Milan and Kay Yerkovich. They're a couple that wrote this marriage book. And I find the information they have very helpful. They identified how our childhood impacts our romantic relationships and marriages. And so they identified these imprints, these styles. There's 6 of them. I'm going to cover one of them today. And it's called the pleaser style. Okay? So each style has a parenting or a childhood environment that each person grows up in order to create this style that we have. Everybody has a style. The parenting type for the pleaser style is overly critical parents that are just constantly telling you what you're doing wrong all the time, or nothing's ever good enough for them. They're always, using negative statements of what you should and shouldn't do, and it's just a constant theme. Most parents criticize at some point. Do keep in mind these are excessive to degrees of these things. So it's not just, oh no, I criticize my kid, I'm going to get this style. That's a generalization. This is very excessive amounts of criticism, excessive amounts of these things that are really more frequent than normal and problematic and pervasive. Okay? So overly critical, overly anxious or fearful parents that have a ton of anxiety themselves. A lot of these parenting approaches that are critical come from their parents' own anxiety and fear. Usually they mean really well, right? Parents mean well, but the methodology ends up being counterproductive. Parents that are overly angry, they express a lot of anger, they have a lot of blow-ups. That's just a theme in the home. And then a high tension, high pretense dynamic in the house. So you can imagine as a child growing up in this type of household where your parents are critical, fearful, angry, and there's a lot of tension. What happens is you develop this pleasing style. So you develop all these symptoms. So the pleaser, the child becomes anxious themselves. So they adopt that anxiety and that fear. And what they do is they try to keep their environment stable by making everybody else happy. Therefore, they don't have to have anxiety. So they relieve their anxiety by making everyone else happy, and it becomes their mode of survival. So it tends to show up in their romantic life and sometimes even friendships as well. So yeah, anxiety, fear, that's a huge characterized symptom of this style. It's a very fear-based style. Another symptom is they have lots of fear and anxiety when other people have negative emotion. So when other people feel negatively, it makes them very anxious. Pleasers tend to measure other people's emotional temperature constantly. That's one of them on here. They're constantly dipping their emotional temperature measurement in to see how other people are feeling. And then if it's even slightly off, they get anxiety, and then they need to meet that person's needs to relieve that anxiety. Symptoms are also an avoidance of criticism by being very perfectionistic or trying to be just on point 100% of the time. Therefore, there's no one can criticize you over anything because you're doing everything perfectly, right? It's just a survival strategy. Pleasers always tend to put the needs of others first, so they're the last priority on their totem pole, which means their needs go unmet for prolonged periods of time, which can be problematic in a lot of ways if that goes on for a long time. A lot of pleasers are dependent emotionally on others, so their feelings are based on others' feelings. It's like they don't have their own emotion, their emotions are based off other people's emotions. And they unintentionally monopolize their partner's time, usually, just because they don't like their partner to take time away from them because it gives them anxiety. And so a lot of the time, they relieve their fear by making other people happy, meeting other people's needs, but they do tend to feel responsible for other people's happiness. So they really take on that burden and responsibility and really put it on their own shoulders and rise to the occasion, right? Okay, so you can see those symptoms, how they really permeate an individual's relationship, just that grew up this way. So then we have the resolution to this style. So we're the cure or the solution or the way to resolve these issues, things that you can be working on. Number one resolution is to treat the anxiety. In previous videos, I've covered anxiety treatment methods, clinically proven anxiety treatment methods, if you want to watch some of the other videos that I've made. But there's many ways to treat anxiety. It's a very curative disorder. You can treat it. It is curable. It just is very unnatural and takes a lot of work. But treat the anxiety, whether it's through professional or through clinically proven methods, good habits. Number two is to tolerate other people's negative emotions. Pleasers really have a hard time when other people have negative emotion. They tend to swoop in and want to resolve the issue immediately and really smother their partner, and sometimes it makes their partner even more mad when really their partner is needing space. And so the pleaser really needs to learn that when other people are mad, it's okay. And it doesn't mean your relationship's ending. It doesn't mean you're an awful person. It doesn't mean you're failing as a spouse or a partner. It's just, they're human. They have emotion. That's okay. Emotion, everybody experiences emotion. So we just want to tolerate that emotion rather than putting it on as your responsibility to fix, and to fix immediately. Good intentions, but not necessary. Number three for the resolution is meeting your own needs first. So we're human, we have lots of needs. So the idea is if the pleaser meets their own needs, they're going to be in a better position to feel stable and secure. They can deal with the needs of others and meet the needs of others as well as meet their own needs, rather than sabotaging themselves for the needs of others. So it's a trade with consequences. Another resolution is to take responsibility only for yourself rather than for others. You're not really responsible for others, you're just responsible for you. That's all you can control anyways. And so just focus on you, do a really good job at you, right? Each individual, if they were just focused on themselves rather than on focusing on others, usually you'll make progress and you'll do well, you'll be healthier, okay? Another resolution is challenging your fears and assumptions by getting direct reassurance from their partner or their spouse. So since it is characterized by fear, a lot of those needs underneath that fear are a sense of security and stability, and a sense of reassurance and comfort and peace. And if they can just get those needs met, typically all of that anxiety gets resolved that's underneath this style. So that's good to ask for your partner directly if you're married, and to be vulnerable in a healthy way, to get that reassurance, to reduce those fears, and create a safer dynamic where it's okay if people get upset. That doesn't mean the marriage is bad or that you're wrong. Okay? Last resolution is allowing your spouse or your partner to have space, and then also taking the responsibility for your partner or your spouse's emotion and really putting that on your spouse for that. It's really other people's responsibility to manage their own attitude and their own well-being and their own happiness and their own perspective and their own management of their own emotions. So you can't manage other people's emotions. That's unrealistic. In fact, that's not your job to have to do. And every individual is responsible to manage their own emotions and their own attitudes and their own perspectives. And so it's good to give that responsibility back to each individual to manage their own feelings. That doesn't mean you can't be supportive and want to be emotionally validating and be a good listener. That's great, always positive. The pleaser takes on the responsibility of that person's emotion. So we're just giving that responsibility back to each individual rather than taking it on our own shoulders. That's the difference. It doesn't mean you don't care and you don't help. It just means you're not responsible for it. So there's less pressure and expectation. Okay? So there it is. That's the pleaser way with the parenting approach. the symptoms of that style and the resolution to treat it. If you relate to that style at all, don't beat yourself up. You can't choose where you grew up or what family you're born into. You have no control over that at all. But we do need to acknowledge how that impacts us and take ownership over our own style so that we can be healthier and we can have great romantic relationships and ultimately long-lasting marriages. If you have any questions, any thoughts, any concerns, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave your comments below. Subscribing always helps us, and the more people we help, the better. And if you don't have a therapist, go to intentional-counseling.com. Either myself or a trained therapist can help you. All right, guys, we appreciate you stopping by. Take care.